Hello, everyone. We are happy to have you here with us all today in this very important event. We aim to present to you our portal for matchmaking on coronavirus research, particularly focusing on social sciences and socio-economic sciences. And we are happy to have Deputy Director General, Ms. Joanna Drake, to open the event. Please, Ms. Joanna.
Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. Indeed, big pleasure to be here with you today to open this timely and important event. I have recently joined DG Research and Innovation as Deputy Director General, and it is a great privilege, therefore, to have taken on this role at this juncture. I'm very proud when I see the great efforts that we have made by stepping up our support for mobilizing pioneering research and innovation solutions to tackle the crises which have affected us, are still affecting our society and our economy so profoundly. But let me take you through some effects that our funding has had on the pandemic. And in order to illustrate this in financial terms, we have first of all pledged some money, and that is 1.4 billion euros to the Coronavirus Global Response Initiative. 1 billion of this money comes from Horizon 2020, which is the previous EU research and innovation program. But we have also launched a number of special calls for proposals under Horizon Europe, the successor of Horizon 2020, which is complementing, in fact, these earlier actions to fight the coronavirus. Now, what are these projects doing? They are supporting the development of diagnostics, the treatments, the vaccines, and also the preparedness for future epidemics, what we globally call today the resilience. They also address, however, the social economic impact of the pandemic and support innovative ways to tackle the crisis through, for instance, the European Innovation Council. We shall be no doubt later on be hearing in more practical details about some of these projects in the area of social sciences and the humanities. If there is one common thread, I would say, that goes through all the projects and all the initiatives, is that we need to do a lot of joined up work, synergies, if you want, between health, research, and the social sciences and humanities. And we need to do this in order to address a common set of objectives, like, for instance, the social cohesion, inequalities, well-being in Europe, which has been so exacerbated, I would say, by the pandemic. But we also need to increase public engagement in research in order to prepare Europe for similar events in the future. But concretely, you might ask, what are we supporting? And in order to give you a precise idea of some of the innovative solutions that we have supported through Horizon 2020 and Horizon Europe funding, I'd like to refer to at least two particular projects. One is called Periscope, which is a detailed database for researchers and policymakers on the broad socio-economic impacts of COVID-19, and therefore serves as a very reliable source of information to the public. The second project I'd like to refer to is COVINFORM, which seeks to identify and assess measures and tools for the prevention of disinformation on the pandemic, and to analyze its impact on the mental health and well-being of different groups. Indeed, we are more and more living in an era of evidence-based policymaking. Scientific solutions for public health crises are only effective if they are trusted by all parts of society. Clearly, therefore, we need to join forces. We need to pool research and innovation resources too. And this is not obvious. But if we want to emerge stronger, if we want to be more unified from the current crisis, working with partners worldwide is not an option, it's a must. The Commission's communication on the global approach to research and innovation, adopted in May 2021, outlines a vision for this, for bringing countries together in order to share multilateral research and innovation and effect innovation partnerships, which are more focused on finding solutions to global challenges. A key role for us is to identify needs and opportunities for accelerating research through data sharing, to take one example, and to facilitate collaboration in the European Union and beyond. For instance, the new European COVID-19 data platform under the European Open Science Cloud is a great example of global open data sharing and coordination between many different countries. The Coronavirus Global RNI Collaboration Portal presented to you today is conceived as a response to this urgent need to facilitate international research and innovation collaboration in a practical way. We hope that this will be a key tool for global cooperation on coronavirus research and innovation, supporting researchers from across the globe to work together on addressing our most pressing challenges. The portal does not only serve for matching EU projects with international partners, but allows for those partners to network with each other. Thus, it offers the so-called matchmaking opportunities for researchers and research projects on the socio-economic aspects of the pandemic, and to identify particular gaps in order to then collaborate on the broader fields of research, such as natural sciences, engineering, and medical sciences. Participation in this portal is completely on a voluntary basis and open to researchers and all types of organizations from across the globe. Let me conclude now by emphasizing that we're all in this together. In all disciplines, all countries, all parts of society. I think this has been, the primary #1 lesson that COVID has taught us all. The role of EU-funded research and innovation must be, therefore, to support this common response to the pandemic and the far-reaching crisis it has engendered. In tandem with national research and innovation activities, this is the only way in which we can invest in the innovative solutions we need in order to strengthen our current resilience and future preparedness as a society. And I wish you all a very successful conference. Thank you.
Ms. Drake, Deputy Director General, Directorate of Research and Innovation in the European Commission, thank you very much for the opening remarks. Thank you very much again. And I now give the floor to Ms. Maria Cristina Russo, Director for Global Approach and International Cooperation, DG Research and Innovation of the European Commission. Thank you very much. Cristina, please.
Thank you very much, Ebba. Good morning, good afternoon to everybody. Thanks, Joanna, for your words. And I'm very, very excited to be speaking at this event. I have the list of participants, which is really impressive. I see that we are almost 900 people, and I representing many countries around the world. So let me really thank the organizers of this event, Ebba and their team, my team in Brussels, and also the colleagues that help us with the service facility for organizing this incredible event. I would like to say that what we need to do today and what will be done is to raise awareness on the coronavirus Global Research and Innovation Collaboration Portal. As you know, the portal was launched by the European Commissioner for Research and Innovation, Commissioner Gabriel, already in June, on the 23rd of June, during the R&I days, the days of European research and innovation. But what we wanted really is to reach out to the maximum of the researchers in order for this portal to be as effective as possible and reach the aim that we would like to encounter with this instrument. I will not speak about the portal because I will have eminent colleagues that will do that later. I would just like to add a couple of words on how this portal fits within the overall approach of the European Commission for international cooperation in research and innovation. My Deputy Director General, Mrs. Drake, already mentioned that we have adopted in the European Commission what we call a communication. A communication is a way in which we give policy orientation, a communication on a global approach to research and innovation. This communication steers our work and our policy on international cooperation in research and innovation. And in fact, it aims at addressing our actions in a way that we pull together efforts at the EU level, at the world level. We pull together efforts of private entities, of public entities, and we make scientists meet and work together. That's the global approach, in order to better use research and innovation to progress, to move ahead on what are the key challenges that we are facing now in the European Union and in the world. So let me say that what we have identified in this communication is that the instruments and the activities of research and innovation should be joined up in order to move ahead on the what we call in the European Union the twin transition, the transition toward a green economy, towards a digital society, and on health. COVID-19 has shown us that really, in order to face the health threats, international cooperation is essential, and we have done a lot in this respect at the European Union level. Joanna Drake already mentioned the fact that we organized the coronavirus global response, which has raised nearly 16 billion in pledged for developing vaccines, treatments, and tests related to the COVID-19. We have done that and other actions, but also what we really want to do is to find a way to promote the collaboration and the cooperation of our researchers in order to fully tap the possibilities that we offer to the Horizon Europe program, which is the European Union Research and Innovation Program. Let me say there that Horizon Europe is the biggest multilateral research program in the world. It is fully open to the participation of researchers from all countries in the world, be them from private or public organizations. And in fact, through the Horizon Europe program, we support several initiatives which promote research relating to the COVID. We support also other initiatives, and the aim of this portal is really to give an instrument to our science community in the world to know which are the opportunities and which are the means of cooperation. And just let me conclude with a word that's saying that with your work, with the cooperation that you are already carrying out and you will carry out, you will really be doing a lot, not only to advance the knowledge, which will help us to find solutions to address the societal challenges, but also really to create bridges between all of us in different countries of the world, and to really use research and innovation as a mean to build together a better world. We are very keen to promote that in the European Union. And with that, I really wish you a very, very good discussion today. And especially, I wish that you can fully tap the potential which are offered by the Coronavirus Global Research and Innovation Collaboration Portal. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Ms. Russo, on the very interesting presentation on the EU global approach to international collaboration. And now we hear an overview of the EU's overall response to the coronavirus pandemic. Our next speaker is Ms. Barbara Christens, who is replacing Ms. Irene Nordstedt from the European Commission, DG Research and Innovation. Thank you.
So good morning or good afternoon or good evening. I see from the participants that we're covering the globe. And let me delve a little bit into more details based on what both Joanna Drake and Cristina Russo presented. So what I would like to present to you first is a little bit of a background on infectious diseases research. Next slide, please. Yes. So as was already mentioned, we have invested so far 1.4 billion euro on research on infectious diseases between 2007 and 2019. And this investment, if you will, for preparedness was based on investing in neglected and emerging infectious diseases, the setting up of clinical trial networks and research infrastructures, but also epidemiological research and modeling to develop better monitoring systems. Importantly also, so for this afternoon, we invested in social, behavioral and economic sciences research. And we also ensured that we could launch emergency funding through a specific mechanism that was set up. And this mechanism was used to address the Ebola outbreak in 2014 and then the Zika epidemic in 15 and 16. I'm just wondering, I'm seeing not the full screen slide. I don't know if that's the situation for the other people as well. I'm now moving to slide 3, if that is possible. Anyway, I will continue. So from all the funding that we've done and the investments made now for COVID, what are some of the challenges and the lessons that we've learned? Well, the COVID-19 pandemic has shown the importance of investing in research and innovation before the crisis occurs. Then we also showed the importance of being able to deploy financial tools rapidly so that you can start funding the research when it's needed, the urgent research, and like we did in this pandemic, where we launched our first expression of interest in the end of January 2020. So right at the time, WHO declared the COVID-19 epidemic a pandemic. What we also realize is the importance of promoting effective, ethical, and equitable data sharing. And foremost, and also as presented by Cristina, the importance of dialogue and collaborations across nations, across regions of different parts of the globe. Next slide, please. So what did we do in response to the pandemic? Well, firstly, as I mentioned to you, we launched an expression of interest back in January 2020, but we used also the full range of instruments that we had, going from grants to loans, and we promoted different type of research, not only, of course, what everyone has in their minds about vaccines, but also therapeutics, diagnostics, modeling techniques to be able to model the spread of the pandemic. And the second thing we did is we put together emergency funding, like we did with Ebola and Zika, but now even more massively. And then, as was mentioned before, both by Joanna and by Cristina, was we set up this European COVID-19 data sharing platform, which enables to share not only genetic data about the pathogen, but other types of data, epidemiological data, to make metasets of where the pandemic is at and how it spreads. And importantly now these days, information about the variants. Now, another lesson learned, and I was already referring to global collaboration, is we work together with other funders under what is called the Global Research Collaboration for Infectious Disease Preparedness, GLOPEDAR. So we worked hand in hand, GLOPEDAR, so the Research Preparedness Funder, and WHO, to make sure that the research needs and gaps in knowledge that were identified could be addressed through a collaborative approach of different researchers. Also, if we now look, and I was referring to the importance of collaboration, if we look at what we did at the European level, There, we gathered with the member states to develop an action plan, the ERA versus Corona action plan, to try to make sure that the funding from different parts of the member states and the Commission would be coherent, and that we also would identify a series of actions that we could take jointly. So we further developed strategies such as the COVID-19 strategies, and these strategies have been spelled out in Commission communications that you can find on the internet. This communication on the vaccine strategy was published in June 2020, and really the purpose was to accelerate the development, the manufacturing and the deployment of vaccines in the COVID-19. And it was also to ensure quality, safety and efficacy of the vaccines and access to them. Vaccines are very important, and I don't need to belabor that point, but in the context of COVID-19, therapeutics are important as well. So we developed the therapeutic strategy that really aims at to push forward promising therapeutic candidates into further production, mass production, distribution and sale. We also aim to better map what are the promising therapeutics and even diagnostics in the make, and where to be able to mobilize funding should this be needed. So under Horizon 2020, we already funded quite some research, and as I mentioned, treatments, diagnostics, vaccines, socio-economic impacts. And we also mobilized the infectious disease finance facility to help fund vaccine-related research, and BioNTech, that you are all familiar with, received support to this facility. Now coming to this afternoon, the social sciences and humanity research in response to COVID-19. So here as well, we funded social sciences and humanity research already before the outbreak, because social and behavioral sciences are important elements. We need more evidence to see how we can mobilize people, but also how to address specific concerns of people, how to address inequalities, etc. So, but to respond to the COVID-19 pandemic, we had the SONAL Global project identified, and you will hear more about that project later on, because that project started in 2018, but prompted or not, in reaction to the pandemic, it started working on identifying the complex and cumulative factors that produce and exacerbate vulnerabilities and inequalities as a consequence of the pandemic. So in May 2020, so I refer to the first call expression of interest in January 2020, but in May, we launched a second emergency call with a total of 33.2 million to investigate behavioral, social and economic aspects of the outbreak response. And here I'm listing a series of projects that that have been funded and that are actually carrying out research. And for two of them, you will hear more later this afternoon. We will be sharing the slide to those that are interested, so I'm not going to read all of it, but just to show that when we started at the outbreak, we started with a broad agenda covering from modeling to vaccines, therapeutics, etc. And then here, in the second expression, we zoomed in on the social dimension of the pandemic and its impact on people and societies. So now in terms of the future, so Horizon Europe is a very large framework program, the new framework program, with a budget of 90.5 billion. So the aim of Horizon Europe is to tackle climate change, of course, helping to achieve the UN Sustainable Development Goal and boost EU's competitiveness and growth. And the program wants to facilitate collaboration and strengthen the impact of research and innovation to tackle global challenges. And Horizon Europe has different clusters, thematic areas for funding research. And for you, for the audience of today, we believe that Cluster 1, Health, and Cluster 2, Culture, Creativity, and Inclusive Society are important vehicles or funding opportunities for research in the field of social sciences. So for the Cluster 1, Health, we have 6 expected impacts. True research provide evidence that will enable us to stay healthy in a rapidly changing society, to live and work in a health-promoting environment, to tackle diseases and reduce disease burden, also to ensure access to innovative, sustainable and high-quality healthcare technology and systems, and then unlock the potential of these new technologies. Next slide, please. So here, for Cluster 1, we are highlighting a few of the topics. So these calls are open, a few of the topics for 22 that you might be interested in applying on. Because as Christina also mentioned, our framework programs are open to the world and we encourage collaboration across the globe. Next slide, please. For Cluster 2, so Culture, Creativity and Inclusive Society, it aims to enhance democratic governance and citizen participation, promote cultural heritage, and to respond to shape and multi-economic, technological and cultural transformations. So here, under this cluster, again, the slide lists a few topics open in 22, so open now for 22, that you might consider, and you can access the information, more detailed information about these topics in the Funding and Tenders portal. So I was referring to Horizon Europe funding, but we also have a novelty that as of September of this year, the European Commission launched the European Emergency Preparedness and Response Authority to prevent and rapidly respond to health emergencies. And here is focusing on enabling the availability and distribution of countermeasures to combat serious cross-border threats. And it will work in 2 modes. Before the crisis, it will focus on preparedness, so supporting research and innovation for new medical countermeasures. And in the crisis mode, additional funds should be mobilized to address the pandemic, whatever the nature of this pandemic or public health emergency is. We also are working together with the member states on a partnership on pandemic preparedness. And this partnership on pandemic preparedness is a response to a request from the member states to better coordination between the member states and the Commission around preparedness plans. And this was one of the important elements of the ERA versus Corona action plan I was referring to. So the idea is here that the partners, member states and European Commission, but others may join as well, should develop and agree on an aligned multi-annual agenda for research with common objectives. And this pandemic preparedness partnership that is in the make will work in synergy with the HERA that has been set up. So the 3 objectives it has is to improve the EU's preparedness to prevent, predict and respond to epidemics. As I already mentioned, the strategic research and innovation agenda, and work towards the European research area around pandemic preparedness. So I hope that with this very broad overview, you have gotten a sense of not only what we have invested in so far, but the opportunities for the future. And I'm sure that the matchmaking portal will be a good avenue to be able to mobilize, possibly to apply for Horizon Europe calls. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Barbara, for this interesting overview of the EU response to, in terms of research and innovation, of course, to the pandemic. And now I will be giving you an overview of the portal that we've been hearing about since the beginning of the event. If the organizers can kindly share my slides. So yes, what is this portal that you've been hearing about from colleagues in the presentation since the beginning of the event? This portal is a matchmaking portal. It's a hub for scientists worldwide, offering matchmaking and networking opportunities, not only for individual researchers, but for research organizations and any entities interested to collaborate on research related to the coronavirus pandemic. Of course, the portal has a focus. Next, please. Next slide, please. The portal, of course, why now? It has been evident, and as Ms. Russo presented in her speech about the global approach to international collaboration of the European Commission, that it has been more evident than ever that this pandemic, we cannot address it alone, not in one country, not in one continent. And while there has been strong focus on collaboration related to diagnostics, therapeutics, and vaccines, there is a gap in trying to bring together social scientists and socio-economic scientists to work together on the socio-economic impacts of the pandemic. And so this portal addresses a gap where it's trying to create a platform for social scientists and scientists working in the area of economics and business together, to work together, to network, to work on exchanging data, developing case studies, developing comparative studies, finding funding for joint research initiatives. So there was a need for this portal to bring all those who are interested in this domain to work together. While the portal focuses on social sciences and socio-economic sciences, it's not excluding other domains. Next, please. I will take you through a few slides later after this video about the portal to see that you will find that the portal is very inclusive. And by inclusive, we mean that it's inclusive in terms of the entities that can join the portal. Those could be, as I mentioned, individual researchers. Those could be research organizations, and inclusive in terms of disciplines as well, and thematic areas. So I leave you just for perhaps one or a couple of minutes with the video, and then I continue my slides.
Heba, I don't know whether it's me, but I have no sound. So if this is the case, maybe we can continue with the presentation.
Are you a social scientist looking for a matchmaking opportunity to collaborate on research and innovation related to the coronavirus? The EU Coronavirus Global Collaboration RNI portal is now up and running. The portal serves as a hub for social scientists all over the world, providing networking and matchmaking opportunities for research organizations, independent researchers, and projects addressing the socioeconomic aspects of the coronavirus pandemic. It endeavors to connect research organizations and individual researchers, as well as to create synergies with other research, data, and funding platforms addressing coronavirus. The portal is helping research organizations and individual researchers to collaborate on research projects related to the socioeconomic aspects of the pandemic, create networking and matchmaking opportunities, connect with other researchers and increase the impact of their activities, coordinate the sharing of knowledge, complement synergies with other online platforms on the coronavirus pandemic.
We are launching our Coronavirus Global Research and Innovation Collaboration Portal, and this is again another proof that only together we can tackle this challenge and we can even have a better future.
Collaboration is now more important than ever. Register today and expand your capacity for research and innovation.
Back to my slides, please. As you can see from the video about the portal, that what we are trying to create here is a hub for scientists and researchers to come together. As I mentioned, whether the objective is to join forces to find funding opportunities, where the portal will be linked and will have links to all relevant events, funding opportunities and calls, whether you want to work on exchanging data, whether you want to work together on a comparative study or jointly work on a case study, or just network for exchange of knowledge and sharing data. We are trying to create this hub to be the place for social scientists, economists, and those even interested in the business dimension or the research dimension of the business impacts of the COVID pandemic. So again, if you belong to a research organization, if you have an ongoing project, if you do not have an ongoing project, but you wish to engage in a project, if you are based in Europe, in the European Union, or if you're based in Africa, or if you're based in Asia, we are inviting you to have the portal as your hub for destination to meet peers and to meet other researchers and jointly work with them. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, the focus, and I don't want to keep repeating myself, I just want to give you an overview of the portal. You will visit it. We will provide the links in the last slide, but you will find that many members already registered in the portal, so you can just any type of organization, as you see, it can be a higher education organization, an individual researcher, a government or public sector, a business or a not-profit or a non-for-profit organization or a private company. The fields of research, if you open the drop list and you will find all the disciplines, including psychology and cognitive sciences, but also not excluding life sciences and engineering, where the portal, as I said, is very inclusive in terms of thematic areas, and it's very wide in terms of geographic coverage, of inviting members from all over the globe to join the portal and benefit from the opportunities offered by being a member of that portal. Next, please. So, as I said, what's in it for me? Why join now? Because again, it's offering a networking opportunity with like-minded research community across Europe and beyond. It's offering opportunities to partnership with other members, to view projects that are posted on the portal by other members, to see the cooperation opportunities offered under ongoing projects, or to join forces to expand your portfolio, meet professionals and practitioners, and join forces to work together on existing projects or apply for funding. The portal itself does not provide funding, but it will always include information about funding opportunities that are offered, whether by the European Commission or any other entities supporting COVID or coronavirus-related research. Next, please. Next, please. So the portal is designed in a very, very user-friendly approach. Participation in the portal is on voluntary basis. Very limited information is requested from members to, of course, the registration is free on voluntary basis, as I said. All what you have to do is click on the link and fill in a profile with the type of organization you belong to, or if you're an individual researcher, identify your research interests. If you have ongoing projects that you want to open for international collaboration, provide a glimpse on those projects without a structured or a format that you can post. You can choose the type of format you want to present the project, the information that you want to add, for information that you want to keep for like not for the public. So it's as I said, it's on voluntary basis, and it's very flexible, and it's very simple and brief. And then you become a member. It's literally that easy. Next, please. So how to join? As I said, we will provide those slides for all the participants in the event. You will just have to click on the link. You will have to create an EU login account, which does not automatically make you a member in the portal. This is just to create the login account for your safety and security of data. And then you publish your member profile and create your own account. And then publish again your collaboration interests and what kind of collaborations you're looking for. It's basically a place where you can present your potential and your interests, as well as browse and see the potential and interests posted by other members in the portal, and then browse and filter the opportunities and the members and the projects that match your interests. And that's it. It's as I said, it's a free registration on voluntary basis, covering all thematic areas and very wide and open in terms of geographic coverage. I don't want to take longer time. I think we need to leave more room for discussions, but I hope this presentation gave you an overview of what the portal is about and why you join. And thank you very much for your interest, and we hope you consider having a more in-depth look at the portal. And thank you very much again. And now we move to our next session, which a very interesting panel with interesting and esteemed speakers, and moderated by a very experienced moderator, Mr. Chris Burns. I'll leave it to you. Thank you.
Heba, thank you very much. I have one question for you, if you can hang on there a second, is in yes, my discussions with some of the panelists that we're going to have right now, there are other portals and platforms around the world. What makes this different from the others? And I think maybe I can already answer. I think it's probably because it can also, it's not only an exchange of information, of data, but it's also an opportunity for people to put their heads together and make joint projects through EU funding. I see that point about EU funding there. Is that right, or is there more to it than that?
I think you're absolutely right, but it's even more than that. As I mentioned, the portal is completely open in terms and very inclusive, as I said, in terms of thematic areas and geographic inclusion, if I may say. But it's also focusing on addressing a gap. Many of the portals that exist are focusing on life sciences, but this has a prime focus to focus on social sciences and socio-economic sciences. It's also linked to all the other portals, and we are open to include more portals. We aim to create a one-stop portal or a hub for the research community, whether, as you said, come together and find matchmaking opportunities and networking opportunities, but also to be the place to visit when they're looking at opportunities offered under other portals, whether those are EU portals or non-EU portals. So the EU funding is yes on the portal, but not only. We will always make sure to create links and synergies with all existing portals. So the objective is to create a one-stop hub for the researchers, to be the destination, to meet people and also collaborate. And as I said, we are not only looking at, we are flexible, and the portal, as if members will join, they will see that they can post information about existing projects, but also find collaboration opportunities on new projects that they want to find funding for. So it's both. And also, one additional thing, it's not limiting the participation to research organizations or by the Commission language to legal entities, but to individual researchers that are not necessarily affiliated to an entity, but individual researchers and freelancers who wish to be part of the portal and meet other people as well.
Right, right. And it's all about tackling post-COVID together and preparing for the next possible crisis, but tackling it together, as Commissioner Maria Gabriel just said, as you saw. Thank you very much, Heba. We're going to move on now. And now it's after everyone has seen what this has an idea of what this portal is, it's now up to you. And in fact, even by virtue of the fact that we're all connected from around the world on this very webinar, is kind of like a living portal in itself, isn't it? And we want to talk to some researchers in different parts of the world on how this can work for them and for you. And we want to get your questions too. So if you have any questions or comments, feel free to put them into the chat. We'll try to get to them as much as we can in this next roughly 45 minutes. But then after that, there are these breakaway sessions where you can also participate and do that as well. So that's pretty much the tech tips for you, is questions in the chat. And keep in mind the hashtag. If you hear something good, or if you want to make a comment on the social networks, it's hashtag EU COVID portal, hashtag EU COVID portal. And it would be great to see you out there also on the social networking dance floor. So a couple of headlines I wanted to mention very quickly that I saw in reading up for this. One is from Medical News Today, headline saying COVID-19 lockdowns in UK deepened social inequality. Yes, of course, we know this, but this was from a recent study that they even quote poet Damien Barr saying, "We are in the same storm, but we are not all in the same boat." And that's about analyzing the fallout from this crisis. It's affecting different people different ways, but obviously affecting us all. And the other one I thought was very interesting in Nature. The headline is, "I hope you die. How the COVID pandemic unleashed attacks on scientists." The dozens of researchers tell Nature they have received death threats or threats of physical or sexual violence. So that it's not only dealing with the issue, but it's a dealing among researchers themselves, how they're dealing with the issue. I think it's quite interesting. So the main questions we want to deal with in these next during this session is why this international cooperation is so crucial in this post-COVID recovery, the value of this knowledge sharing, and how we can bring social scientists to work together with this collaboration portal. Let me pitch this first to Professor David Levine, Academic Coordinator for the EUI COVID Data Portal, European University Institute. David, yeah, tell us first, why is this so crucial, this portal, in the post-COVID recovery?
Well, you're talking to somebody who in March of 2020 established a social science data portal for a variety of researchers all over the world. And I would actually, I just have a couple of comments on this particular portal because I think it's a very good project. And I hope to migrate basically my own members, of which there are hundreds all over the world, onto this new portal. But I just want to make a couple comments about, because I have a year and a half of experience of doing this, of things that might be desirable to improve this portal to make it more useful to researchers. The first thing I noticed about the portal is it doesn't seem to have a scientific advisory board. It seems to me it's going to be more valuable to researchers if it has scientists who are in a position to not necessarily oversee, but at least make suggestions about how the portal could be most useful to researchers. But I think the other thing I'd like to emphasize, there needs to be a communications facility. The portal that I set up revolved around a mailing list, so that it wasn't necessarily a question of matching people, but people with questions. I'm wondering about this particular problem. I need this particular data, how to place where they could post. There ought to be, I was never able to do better than sort of very simplistic sort of thing. But with the resources behind this portal, I think there's the possibility of having a very good communications facility where there's bulletin board-like facilities where people can post questions and other people can post answers. And in some cases that may lead to collaboration. In other cases, it may just lead to better research. So I think this is a very good project. but I would like to see it advance forward, not just in terms of increasing the number of users, but in terms of the number of things that it can accomplish.
Okay,
now,
I mean, to keep in mind that this was launched, what, I think in July, so
right.
I'm sure there are opportunities to make it even more effective. But
I would think so, yes.
Well,
but anyway, I wanted to talk about what's important in the portal.
Yeah.
And there's an emphasis on internationalism, and I'm not entirely sure that that is well placed. I think there's a need for collaboration. So I just for myself, and I'm hardly unique among researchers in this respect, I think the only continent in which I'm not regularly in touch with other researchers would be Antarctica. And that's pretty much true of most social science researchers. We collaborate all over the globe. That's what we do.
Yeah.
So I don't think that having us reach out to, say, South Korea, where I have several students at top universities who I work with regularly, and that would be the same of European researchers and American researchers, and UK researchers and Chinese researchers, and on and on. But these networks tend to be somewhat parochial in the sense that they tend to be disciplinary. So I'm an economist in particular. So my network is primarily a network of economists. I do have some networks in other social sciences, but they're not as extensive. They're not as widespread. And in fact, quite frankly, they come out in part because of this COVID-19 portal that I set up, through which I met a number of different people. So I think the ability to connect people across disciplines is at least as important as the importance of connecting people within disciplines but across countries.
Right.
Because those connections are weaker in general in the social sciences.
Okay.
So connect a medical researcher with an economist or with a sociologist. This can be of a lot of importance. And I think this portal can be very useful for that purpose because it is open across disciplines and brings people just focus on the social sciences, but accessible to people who aren't social scientists, who might be able to contribute to social science research.
Yeah, and thus maybe be able to put together teams for these different projects.
That's right.
Let me move on to Stephen Hoffman, because I want to make one round of Q&A with all the panelists and then open this out to any questions from the audience as well. I have your talking points. I hope we can hit many of them, if not most of them. All of them are very, very interesting to hit on. Stephen Hoffman, Canadian Institutes of Health Research Chair of the GLOPID Funders Forum, did I get that right, for social sciences research on infectious diseases. It's a GLOPID working group. Now you just heard David's take on how portals can be useful. How do you think this portal can be useful for you, and just the importance of this kind of exchange of information and putting together teams and matchmaking in dealing with the post-COVID recovery?
Great, yeah, thanks, Chris. And first, let me just thank the European Union, the European Commission for this effort and for inviting me to be part of this event and panel. You know, COVID-19 has really highlighted that we need science, we need social science in order to address the full range of challenges that we face in society. We've seen some of the best examples of global scientific collaboration during this pandemic, right? We've seen vaccines being developed. We've seen, as David mentioned, teams of social scientists being deployed, leveraging their networks from around the world. But at the same time, some of the traditional ways in which researchers have come together are not possible during a global pandemic when there's physical distancing, reduction in travel and such. And so we just need every and any mechanism, and we need innovations like this portal that is going to help bring researchers together to tackle these big questions. Of course, researchers, we've been working globally for decades, so that's not new. But what's key is that how in a pandemic do you solve these big challenges? One of the things, Chris, I can emphasize is that it was about a year ago, I was invited to lead the development of the UN research roadmap for the COVID-19 recovery. It was a broad effort involving 38 research funding organizations, 270 experts, all done in a rapid 10 weeks because of how urgent the knowledge needs were to be identified to inform a better recovery.
Right.
But one of the things that was clear is how the most fundamental issues that we need to learn about to inform a better recovery are common across countries. And that actually was a surprise to many people It's things like gender equity. It's things like ensuring decent work. It's things like ensuring there isn't a digital divide. And that's equally relevant for the richest countries and the poorest countries. And then we can benefit from global scientific collaboration to address those kinds of challenges.
And this collaboration needs, as David was saying, needs to be from different disciplines all at the same time. It's kind of interconnected there. It's almost like a Rube Goldberg kind of solution to something. And the only way you can do that is on some kind of a portal, right?
I love the Rube Goldberg analogy. I think that's right. But I think that's what's important also, Chris, is that there needs to be an emphasis on social sciences. You know, when you look at sort of the research funding profiles, we massively underinvest in social science in every society around the world. Yet when you look at the downstream consequences of a pandemic like COVID-19, I mean, yes, there's medical issues. We need healthcare, and we need more scientific, technical innovations. But what good are those innovations if we can't then have the social knowledge to make full use of them? So that is key. And how great is it that we have a portal focused on the social and socioeconomic consequences in order to accelerate these kind of collaborations?
Okay, let me get back to you, but I want to go to Tanja Friedrichs, the Minister Counselor for the delegation to the European Union to India. And Tanja, I mean, how can global social science, humanities, knowledge sharing help from where you see it, from your perspective?
Thank you very much, Chris, and thank you. Can you hear me?
I hear you perfectly, yes.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, bitte.
All right. And also I would like to ask, you can see me?
See you great.
Because I think, okay, that's good. No, that's not what I wanted to hear, but I think in this virtual world, it's also good that we try to improve the means of connection.
Of course.
But it's good that they are there, and the global portal is one good illustration of that. I also would first of all like to thank the organizers for associating me to this event. As I mentioned before, I was really honored. I'm a lawyer by training, so I don't know if I fall in the category of a social scientist, but what I certainly are, I am an ambassador of international cooperation on research and innovation. I first of all truly believe in it, and I have also seen it, and I think we have all seen it in this pandemic, that the answer to solutions is more and not less international cooperation. We hear it all the time. We would not stand where we stand today in facing this pandemic if we hadn't joined forces on all fronts. And what is true for what we qualify as hard sciences is, in my view, equally true for social sciences and humanities. The rationale is the same. Exchange of ideas and best practices and learning from experience from others in different countries and in different regions and different minds. So definitely, yes, international cooperation, but also definitely, yes, social sciences and humanities. Of course, I am a European girl, and I also promoting cooperation under our framework program. And I share very much the approach that we have, that social sciences and humanities is cross-cutting. And we have done that. We have included the social sciences dimension, but I'm afraid we didn't do it enough, and we didn't do it from the beginning. So yes.
Well, better late than never, right?
Such a portal.
Better late than never.
Excuse me?
Better late than never, I suppose.
That's true. No. We have done and all that. And the portal, for example, helps. I have had stakeholders saying, oh, I didn't know, and I learned, and we connect, and that is very good. Especially also, as Heba was saying, social scientists are very often individual academia, and they are not backed by a whole institution behind them. So for them, it is even more important to have the meeting of the minds to share ideas. So I mean, of course, I have probably digressed from your question.
No, I think it's okay.
What I want to say.
Okay, go ahead. Bitte.
What I definitely want to say is, yes, social sciences and humanities, yes, international, we have done, but not sufficiently, or possibly not sufficiently visible. And of course, to address all the problems that the pandemic has brought to us, we cannot do but enough, and we need a strong network of social scientists. We cannot leave that problem to pharmaceuticals, to doctors, to hard sciences only.
Yeah.
I think I passed my time, or you
That's
want to hear
at the
more?
moment. I'm going to come back to you. That's fine. Sit tight. I want to go to Gabby Lombardo, European Alliance for Social Sciences and Humanities. Gabby, are you with us there?
Yes, I am. Hi, Chris.
Hi, good to see you. Tell us about Sonar Global, about mobilizing social sciences against infectious threats.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me, and welcome the initiative to have a portal which is focused on social science humanities, but it's open also to other disciplines, which is, as others have been saying, is particularly relevant. We are very aware of the success, the matchmaking meetings that the Commission had in the past for the European framework. And that's, so we scale up, I hope, with this portal to a different stage. As others have been saying, I mean, as Sonar and other project, they come from a long-term collaboration. They were not born because there is a call for funding. Let's bear in mind that these are long-term collaboration. The academics forge over time, and then they quickly respond when there is a call, when there is a funding available. Yeah. Just one quick word, the warning that I want to place in there. They say the matchmaker is brilliant and collaboration is fantastic as long as the funding match. As Stephen was saying earlier, if a call, for example, the European Commission was saying they fund social science humanities in the second emergency call for COVID, success rate at 2.3%. Let's bear in mind that the international collaboration should not be just involve researchers, but government in contributing in this general funding. At the moment, we do have some fantastic initiatives. For example, National Science Foundation with the Canadian Federation working on a remedy post-COVID recovery. But let's make sure that success rate remain high, otherwise people will stop collaborating that way.
We talked 2 days ago about this, and the success rate, that kind of threw me off. You mean a project was not successful, but the idea of getting a successful application for funding for a project, and you gave me the number of roughly 100 out of 150 projects applying for a certain program, that only 4 got funding. I think that's your.
Yeah, this is exactly the case. And this is not actually, it's not just the European funding that's got this problem. It's a problem that they go across in other research councils with other international platforms. So we do foster the collaborations, and we need to also encourage governments to put funding behind these international collaborations. Otherwise, it remains an academic exercise, which we do already.
Right, and beyond this recovery, it's also a question of being prepared for emergencies, right?
Absolutely. I mean, as I said, all this research that's been done for COVID-19 wasn't born for COVID-19. These are years of research which have been pulled up together. I'll give you an example. ISH has been partnering with the World Pandemic Research Network, a French-funded platform which pulled together SSH-driven project on pandemic diseases. And so kind of gather together the visibility of this research under one umbrella. It's important, I mean, this research is out there. How you tease out when it's needed is a different story, and this is where the funding are crucial. So it's not just a matter of matchmaking for a purpose, it's actually also to tease out the research which is already happening and make it more visible.
Absolutely, absolutely. I want to come back to you. And SSH, for those who probably everybody knows what SSH is, but I had to look it up because I don't have all this alphabet soup in my head. But social sciences and humanities, which I was a part of at UC Berkeley. We studied economics, David. I did. As a dismal science, but you have to stay optimistic. Anyway, I merged files here because I meant to talk to Tamara Giles-Vernick about Sonar Global. My apologies.
That's quite all right.
Tamara, tell us about Sonar Global, created in 2019. Fill us in, and how
2019
addressing issues, preparedness especially, right?
Yeah. Okay. So first of all, I'd like to thank the organizers of this meeting. It's a pleasure to be here. So Sonar Global was created in 2019, and it was originally conceived as a global network for the social sciences of preparedness and response to epidemics and to antimicrobial resistance. And this was funded under the Horizon 2020 structure. So this is originally a coordination, and still is a coordination and support agreement. So our task was to create a network, to create regional hubs, of which we have several, to develop certain kinds of tools and models that particular members could actually use, specifically the vulnerability assessment and community engagement, which Barbara mentioned earlier, and for which we received additional funding in 2020 to carry out in a number of, excuse me, European settings. And we've also been engaged in capacity building, where I see there is, I would say, a slight overlap, but also a marvelous contribution to the current portal that the European Commission has set up, is that it really is a kind of, I would say, matchmaking service. One of the things that I think we've done very well within Sonar Global is, bring in different sorts of networks and different kinds of social scientists. Because, it's like talking about biology. I mean, this is a huge array of disciplines that I think, as David rightly pointed out, we don't always speak to each other. And Sonar Global, I would say, I would confess, is quite heavy on the anthropologists. We've got some historians, we've got some, sociologists, some political scientists. We're weak in terms of the economists and sort of legal scholars as well. So, this is something that I think the portal can really, with its kind of overarching, umbrella, could potentially bring in a whole array of members that we couldn't do. We do have something like 760 members around the world, but the regional hubs have been quite active in catalyzing new forms of collaborations across in regions according to their interests. Yeah.
But there is a problem that we're so spread very thin, right?
Yeah, and I think that's in part it's a function of the problem that Gabby Lombardo was pointing out, that the funding is insufficient. And I know if we look at the sort of global funding for social sciences, the numbers look enormous, and yet one of the things that we see within our network is that people are stretched quite thin. Whether additional funding, I would think that additional funding would help that an enormous amount, but also capacity building. I think, particularly in certain low-income countries, and most of my work has been in Africa.
Yeah.
There are some incredible researchers and incredible institutions throughout the continent, but people are stretched really, really thin, and the COVID pandemic has worsened that situation.
Okay, I'd like to also once again invite those who are watching to send in your questions through the chat or any comments. That would be great. We have a little bit of time here, about 20 minutes for a little bit more Q&A. I want to go back to the top of that to David. David, how I see in some of the notes you shared with me You mentioned the endogeneity of behavior. I had to look that up. And I guess what you mean is that there are variables determined by their relationship with other variables. Very, very difficult to evaluate the impact of something like a pandemic on socioeconomic, from a socioeconomic standpoint. How can a platform like this help in address that?
Well, I think I want to cast this in the context of something that Stephen said.
Okay.
Right, and several of the speakers have talked about, which is the importance of social science research. And I think I could do this in the context of a concrete example, which illustrates the issue of endogeneity and the importance of social science research at once. So I would refer particularly to the issue of vaccines. Okay. So there's been obviously this tremendous accomplishment on the part of the medical researchers to develop and test these vaccines in record times. Large amounts of money were spent upon that. The problem that we face right now is, among other things, there's limits in production capacity that maybe economists would know something about, but there's problems with uptake in Western countries. People won't take the vaccines.
Yeah.
Right? Now, you can have the best vaccines in the world, but if nobody takes them, it doesn't do any good. Now, what are social science researchers good for? Well, we actually know something about why people do and do not take vaccines, and something about what are effective strategies of publicity, of information, and so forth and so on. This goes back, I had students who worked on Ebola in Africa, and about the role of radio stations in getting people to change their behavior. So endogeneity is about people changing their behavior, not because somebody ordered them to get a vaccine, but perhaps because information was provided to them in the right way, so they understood the value of getting the vaccine. So, as I say, billions for the vaccines don't do us any good unless we spend maybe a few millions for the social science research to figure out how to get people to take the vaccine. So that would be my illustration of endogeneity.
Yeah, would that be, that's I guess, an example of how maybe we were not prepared for how people reacted to this, to the vaccines, is that I guess maybe a lot of policymakers thought, well, yeah, it's going to make sense. It should make sense. People will want to get vaccinated. But it was, I think a lot of people were surprised by the, and there still is a lot of resistance. It's become quite political. But is that something that social scientists foresaw? Can you tell us you told us so or not?
Absolutely, yes. I could tell you that we told you so.
Really? Really?
Absolutely. There are decades of study. There have been many contagious diseases, many vaccination programs. I could give you example after example of vaccines that were very valuable that were turned down and great havoc was created.
Yeah, but okay,
in some cases,
you're mentioning Ebola and these other diseases in the developing.
I was thinking measles in South America, actually.
Yeah, but there was maybe a lack of information. Maybe a lack of education, but in these developed and highly educated.
And a certain amount of paranoia about the vaccine programs. Yeah. A certain amount of paranoia about vaccine programs, which is exactly what we've seen in Western countries. But vaccine skepticism in Western countries is hardly a new phenomenon. Anti-vaxxers as a movement goes long before we ever had COVID.
Okay, yeah, but it's usually a very small part of the population. And now,
no, it's a very influential part of the population, as it turns out. And for most of these vaccines, so once we killed off a lot of these diseases like smallpox, right? Or, after we killed off some of these diseases, the importance of the vaccines became less. And so these anti-vaccine movements were able to thrive. But I will say that I think that social science researchers have been on top of this for quite a long time now. I just want to add one brief comment about the portal and about the funding issues that were raised by others.
Yeah.
And in particular, Tanya mentioned this issue of fractionalization. I shouldn't call it that, but I would call it that. Social science research tend to be sort of independent. We sort of do our own thing. And for something like this, there's a need for we don't really have an infrastructure the way the medical profession does, for example. There's nothing like the WHO for social sciences.
No, there isn't.
And this handicaps us. And I just want to say there's an issue of the overall funding, that there's also the issue of the way that the funding is used, because it's relatively easy to get funding for a particular exciting project. It's actually quite difficult to get funding to build the basic infrastructure. I'm sure that Gabby is more than aware of this, as she's been trying to build infrastructure. And we talk about how thin-stretched it is, but part of it is not just the total amount of money spent on social science research, but the fact that it's mostly aimed at individual research projects and less aimed. So the portal is useful in this, but it would be even more useful if it was enable us to sort of form a basis for a real infrastructure, data sharing and so forth and so on. So that's my advertisement part.
Right. Maybe Gabby, you want to add to that, and keep in mind, I see a question or a question statement from Karen Kassenhofer, concerning the topics of collaboration preparedness. Was mentioned, but not prevention of pandemics. Was this a conscious omission? But I think in general, preparing for the next one and anticipating and looking back at how we dealt or didn't deal with this one, preparing and building the infrastructure for that and building the preparedness. How can you talk about that, and how this platform can help?
Well, at the moment, we've been through this several times, because this preparing for the next is, for example, we are talking about the next major crisis will be mental health collapse, I mean, in different ways and different. So we are in the process of funding research in different areas, and where large database of information, and David was mentioning about infrastructures. I mean, the European Commission in this way, in this direction, is supporting the research community of social science humanities, building some very important infrastructure like the ESS, the European Social Survey, the CESDA, social science data, and then we have also the digital humanities and Clarin for literature, and they all work together to get some kind of big skyscrapers where we need to actually start using social science humanities. That they said often do not use data sharing. So that's something that we really need to learn to do it. As a community, we really need to learn to do it and move away from the individual researcher kind of approach. That will help us also to help a policymaker to prepare for next crisis. Not saying that when the COVID started, I think social science humanities researchers were really at the forefront of supporting policymakers to understand some of the consequences of while we're looking for a vaccine and we lock everybody indoors, what do we do in the meantime, economically, financially, from the banking system, from the market side, from the well-being of people, health, mental health, well-being in general, and the social relations and so on.
Stephen, David made reference to the fact that there is really no WHO for social sciences, but you mentioned to me in the past about the development of a UN research roadmap for the COVID-19 recovery. Could that be the basis for something like that, the precursor?
Well, Chris, I love the question. You know, in many respects, the reason there was a need to develop a UN research roadmap for the COVID-19 recovery was because there wasn't that research agenda that looked at all the downstream socioeconomic consequences of the pandemic coming from WHO. And that makes sense. I mean, WHO's immediate response that's expected of it is the medical response, but well, the problem is that
aspect to it, but it's still not the other stuff, right?
Well, that's where I was going. Yeah, I know exactly. I mean, that's but the challenge is that actually in the longer term, the world actually is looking to WHO and the UN system more broadly to deal with the broader range of issues. And so in that respect, a narrow focus on the immediate actually undermines the overall response. And these things, Chris, are highly predictable. You mentioned, like, did we know? And I think the panel sort of delighted in saying, yes, we knew. I think the best example of that, just to give one example, is to point to the network that Tamara leads. I mean, Sonar Global was created before this pandemic. And if you look at the key areas that network was created to address, It's exactly the issues that we see in the pandemic. Now, yes, Tamara is brilliant. She's a brilliant leader, and really the work that she's doing is a gold standard for how we need to network social scientists around the world. But the fact that then 700 social scientists joined in that effort because they knew it was important, and then were able to mobilize for the pandemic, highlights that we're not actually making the necessary investments in these kind of networks. But when we do, they can have big impact. So from a business case perspective, COVID-19, of course, has been a terrible event, but hopefully we get some silver linings in the form of realizing how valuable some of these things are and how we have to change the way we do some other things going forward.
Tamara, I see you nodding. You want to add to that?
Yeah, oh, thank you, Stephen. I think one of the things that we need to keep in mind, I know that a lot of people are focusing on preparedness, but I'd also like to echo what Stephen just said, and I think Gabby also mentioned it, that there are going to be long-term consequences of this pandemic. And this is actually something that the European Commission very generously funded us for, and that is to go out and do anthropological vulnerability assessments to really understand on the ground and contextualize the experiences of people who have really been pushed over the brink of vulnerability, or whose life standards have worsened over the course of the pandemic. So all of the things that people have said, has really echoed with what we're actually hearing on the ground. Mm-hmm. And again, we're trying to work with policymakers to devise policies that will actually respond to this. But let me just finish. Sure. What I want to say is, in trying to promote resilience among the most affected by this particular pandemic, we are actually building resilience for the next one. I hope there isn't a next one, but I think we're expecting it.
Yeah, there's quite likely. But isn't this all kind of an intangible asset? I know, Tanya, one of your concerns is communicating the benefits of social science research. How do you do that? How do you quantify it? I guess you can qualify it, but how do you quantify it?
Right, yes. Well, first of all, I would like to echo this importance of global governance. This is relevant in the social sciences as well. But then, of course, we have to be aware we shouldn't have proliferation of institutions and all that. So maybe the first step would be to consider that within the World Health Organization itself. Secondly, definitely one lesson learned from this pandemic and the work that has been done, and tremendous work, and in a short time, is that we should capitalize on that, and we should create a global repository of all these studies that have been done. I was very intrigued. I read a lot of the newspapers, and maybe somebody of you social scientists themselves have an answer to that. But how did we manage to have all that information? And it was rather useful on the experience of the Spanish flu. I mean, how come that suddenly all that information there, and lessons that we could learn of waves and how to address it was there. And so I hope that we have kept that information and experience of this pandemic, because if there will be another pandemic or a crisis and whatever. And in handling such a crisis, communication is very important. Communication is important and I think it's a generic importance. It's not only in communicating when there is a crisis, but especially then it is important. But yes, communication has different dimensions, and it is also important that social scientists come more into the picture, because they would help in communicating better what is going on, and that would also alleviate maybe towards the citizens the impact of such a huge pandemic, make it clearer. And in learning to communicate, we have to factor in something which is the impact of social media, and that is a new thing that compared to previous experiences, and a lot of things I would say went wrong because we didn't factor that in. I mean, this whole almost wave of fake news, and that has an impact on the rollout of vaccination.
Absolutely. So, I just want to remind people about the chat is open now. We have about 8 minutes left to chat. So if anyone would like
if
to,
I could just use one, if I could make one more comment.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, but if I could just make one more comment that is important that we shouldn't forget. There is a lot of research going on, and as you have seen, we do fund on the Horizon 2020, Horizon Europe. So I would like to stress that. But it is important that we also apply the principle of open access to that research, so that we all get access to that information. But access is not enough. You need to put it somewhere. So I would very much plead to consider a repository of the leading scientist studies, and where the institute are, where the individual researchers are, so that we can rely on that pool of talent to involve in the preparedness of another public health outbreak,
Tanya,
or whatever.
Would that be something that that this portal should include?
Sorry, that is?
Would that be something that this?
Can you repeat?
This new portal, can you hear me? This portal, should that include that?
Well, I mean, yes, we should definitely avoid that. This portal is supported by a project, and then when the lifetime of that project is over, we should already anticipate, with all that knowledge that is in that portal, what are we going to do with it? And something more sustainable may have to come out of that, so that all that knowledge, like today we learned a lot from that exchange, so that was very good, that is not lost. I think a lot is done, but a lot is lost. And that is also something that we have to anticipate. So definitely linked to the portal, I would already start thinking on something more sustainable.
Okay, I got a question coming in.
If I could could I briefly add to that? Because the European Commission, both through my home institute, which is European University Institute with some separate funding, has also been building a long-term repository for data, right? Which is somewhat separate from the issue of collaboration. So this is another important project that the EU has been undertaking. This has been specifically done at the European University Institute. So I'd just like to mention that.
Okay, point well taken. Have a question coming in. What about the
just
two aspects?
We have data banks on. We have data banks on a number of important issues like bio data banks, infrastructure for social sciences, even if it is less tangible, could be one option.
Okay. What about the two aspects David raised? This is a question, SAB and communication function. Would someone like to elaborate on that? I'm not sure what SAB stands for in this case.
I believe that's an abbreviation for Scientific Advisory Board, although I've never actually heard it expressed that way before.
Okay. All right, alphabet soup. That's the dangers of that. Yeah, David, you want to go a little bit longer on that, or would someone else like to pipe in?
I'm happy to chime in if unless David. Okay, yeah. So I think I have an interesting role where I'm a researcher at a university in Canada, but I work half-time for the Canadian government's Health Research Funding Agency, and I think one of the things that is highlighted here about how the need for researchers to be connected with and be part of determining the way funding structures are working and the way projects work. I think it's so important that we develop systems to inform a research response to the full range of social challenges. And I think sometimes we have some disconnects actually between the policies that get made, including policies about how research is funded, with the realities of how research is done. I think overall the European Commission has, at least from my view of Canada, from Canada across the pond, has done actually quite a good job of building mechanisms to engage. I think David's point though really highlights that we don't only need to make sure that the various mechanisms, like our funding, is on areas that researchers identify as being the ones that are needed, but actually all aspects, we need to ensure that researchers are involved, and it's all researchers is the key. There's so many collaborations that I see where it's the doctors, it's the engineers, but then it's only like after the fact that we think of, oh yeah, what about the economists? What about the lawyer to make sure it's actually legal, or the ethicist, right? So in that respect, I think there's lots of opportunities to be thinking about how do we not just do things that are needed, and sometimes we just have to do it. There's a pandemic, we just got to get it up there. And kudos to the European Commission for doing it. But sometimes it's also about how do we then make sure it's the biggest value add, the biggest impact. And that would definitely benefit always from engaging the full range of the expertise that you have available.
Unless there's anything really urgent to say, I need to wrap this up. Gabby.
I just want to add a quick note.
Okay, you got the last word, and because as the European Alliance for Social Sciences and Humanities, for a lot of people, what's the last word here? Where do we go from here? Give us a last pep talk on the portal itself.
Not definitely a pep talk, but definitely something important about the visibility of the research ongoing. I think this is something that we really, as a community, miss to do. We really needed to make a better effort to be better connected. The European Alliance was born 4 years ago with just 18 members, organization members, and now we go over 65. And we have a voice in science policy. We can see the funding coming in our direction. And Horizon Europe has the biggest SSH-driven, the best funded SSH-driven cluster we ever seen in
95 million.
20 years. 2.1 billion. So I mean, it's worthwhile, and the visibility is not just for the researchers' competence. Portals maybe, but maybe also a publisher should play an important role to pull together the relevant research on topic areas, on subject, on issues, rather than less being buried in very high spec scientific journals, which we read them on each other, but not give a space to a knowledge society full of very bright people who will be interested in what we published.
Yeah, great last word. Thanks so much to all the panelists, Tanya, Tamara, Gabby, David, Stephen. Thank you so much. And this conversation is not over, because after we take a break, there's going to be 3 breakaway sessions with you look at the window on the breakouts on this. There will be a window for the breakouts on the screen. Oh, yeah, they actually put it up just now. Good. So that's what you will go back to. If you thought of something witty to say, or you heard a good soundbite, there were a lot of good sound bites in this one. Hashtag EU COVID portal. And so, yes, if you couldn't get a word in edgewise this time, there are these 3 breakaway sessions on social sciences, life sciences, and culture and arts. So there's plenty more opportunities today to talk. So please do be involved in that. Have a good break. We'll be back at 15:15 CET. So, that's barely 10 minutes away, 9 minutes away. My name is Chris Burns. Thanks for being with us. See you next time.
Yes, many thanks, Eva. I'm just wondering, yeah, okay. Can you hear me? It's always
yes, we can make it.
Very good. It's always an exploration when when you're doing these online events, and I hardly see anyone. Anyway, I don't want to make it long, because you're a little late and you have been speaking a lot already today. But firstly, let me just on behalf of the European Commission, DG Research and Innovation, thank all speakers and participants to this event. I think I didn't go into the breakout sessions, but I listened to the panel, and I thought it was very inspiring and exciting conversations, and also gives us perhaps some hope that this platform is actually useful, because I heard words like the need to collaborate, to connect, to work together, to coordinate, and this is exactly what the platform is about. It's about collaboration on research projects, and with a specific focus on the socio-economic dimension of the pandemic. It's about creating networks and matchmaking opportunities, connecting with other researchers, coordinating the sharing of knowledge, and all this in complementing, of course, other platforms, what is happening elsewhere in the world, because a lot is happening across the globe. So this portal is really for and by the researchers, and I think that we can agree that it will increase in relevance the more people and organizations decide to connect, to register to it. So we really hope that this session gave you inspiration to join and take advantage of this opportunity. As we said, it's the researchers making the portal. It's voluntary and it's completely bottom up. As we are in a pilot phase of this portal, we are really keen to continue to hear your feedback on what works, what doesn't work, what can be improved, and some ideas were raised already. We really are aiming to transfer this to look in the pilot phase at all these dimensions and turn it into a sustainable platform. And maybe to go back to the words of my new Deputy Director General, Joanna Drake, this in opening our workshop conference today. I think this was also reflected by many of you. Clearly, we need to join forces and pool research and innovation resources if we are to emerge stronger and more unified from the current crisis, and this working with all the partners worldwide. And this portal, the Coronavirus Global RNI Collaboration Portal that you have seen today, and hopefully will also use, is really conceived as a response to this urgent need to facilitate international research and innovation collaboration in a practical way. So let's all use it, and I leave it at that. Many thanks, Heba, and many thanks also to Alkes and the team.